What's up, guys? Jeremy with Savage Gym. Today I want to take a little bit of time and talk to you about one of the key principles that I try to keep in mind as a coach or as somebody who is in a position to share my ideas and my opinions about training and nutrition with others that I don't see all too often in the industry, really, to be honest. And a lot of this comes down to a quote that I'd come across several years ago that I've always kind of tried to keep in the back of my mind, and that says, "Follow the man who seeks the truth, but question the one who says he's found it." Now, one of the reasons that I think this is really powerful is because it reminds you that the position of a leader, a position of a coach, is to also be a student of whatever it is that they are studying, practicing, or teaching. And so I've tried to use that as a reminder for myself to always to remain humble and consider myself less of an expert per se and more of somebody who is just constantly in pursuit of more knowledge with the subject that I've dedicated a large part of my life to learning about. And I don't see that being a very commonly held attitude in the fitness industry. And a lot of it is because it's a lot easier to use dogma to sell product and services than it is to be reasonable and accept the fact that there are a lot of different ways to go about doing the things that we do in this industry. And you can see that a lot, especially on the nutrition side, but also on the training side. You can see the whole arguments between good food and bad food, or you have the paleo diet, which suggests that as long as whatever you ate is, what a caveman had, or if it's a low-carb diet, then as long as you're not eating carbs, then that's the secret to, a healthy, effective diet. Or you have the low-fat diet, which is kind of the opposite, where as long as you are, not eating any significant amounts of dietary fat, then that's going to be the key to health, longevity, and performance. Or the zone diet, where as long as everything falls within, a 60-40-40 percentage split, then it doesn't really matter how you track the calories and everything. That's just kind of the magic ratio of foods. Or even if you look at some of like the vegan or vegetarian diets that say, as long as you're not consuming animal products, then you can live a long, happy, healthy, sustainable life just on that diet. Or even things like carb backloading, where as long as you are eating your carbohydrates in the evening after a training session, it doesn't matter how many you're taking in, or the quality of the food, or where they're coming from, or even something like if it fits your macros, which seems to be pretty reasonable. And while there is an element of truth to each of these different approaches, what they do is they take that one isolated variable that's different than the other approaches and market it as if it were the most important secret that all of the other approaches are missing. And the reason this is done is to sell you things. It's to sell products, it's to sell services, it's to help make someone look like they're an expert because they boldly state these strongly held opinions and then bash every other possible alternative like theirs is the only way you can do something. And that's just simply not true. For each of these different approaches, there have been people who have gained strength or built muscle or lost body fat or managed to live a relatively long and healthy life using any of these different approaches. And it's just not possible or reasonable to say that only one of them is the absolute right way to go about approaching all nutrition for all people, regardless of goals. On the training side, there are plenty of people who have gotten extremely strong and set multiple world records using the West Side method, or using block periodization, or using just old-fashioned progressive overload training where you ramp the weight up every week. All of those different methods have worked for someone at some point. They have not, however, proven to be the only way to go about making every single person successful, regardless of goal or context. You really have to learn how to think critically, about all of these different options, and probably first and foremost, learn how to recognize your own inherent biases towards, a particular approach, because these are going to come from, your life experience, your opinions that you've held because of the context that is your life. And when it comes down to it, the truth is really going to lie somewhere in the middle. And that means that there's some validity to all of the different approaches you can take towards anything. Obviously, the context we're talking about right now is strength training and nutrition. If it were up to me, everyone would do some form of powerlifting style training where they train heavy with compound movements, they do some lighter accessory work and some higher intensity conditioning, and they ate a whole food based diet. But that is not going to be, ideal for everyone for every situation. And as a coach, I have to be willing to step outside of that bias to really look at, what is the context of my client's life? What are the things that they have to take into consideration? What is their schedule? What is their history with food and training? And it is my job as a coach to take all of that into consideration and be familiar with the different tools that are available to me to be able to help that person and select the right tool at the right time. Because optimal on paper is quite often much different than optimal in real life. And because of that, and because of the things that I've learned after working with hundreds of different clients over the last close to 10 years, is that the most educated answer that you can often give as a professional or as an expert is that it depends. So if you're a consumer, then hopefully this has given you a little bit of a perspective on how to maybe process some of the information and opinions that you're constantly being bombarded with through the materials that are marketed to you as somebody interested in the fitness industry. If you're a coach, then hopefully it gives you a few tools to understand your own inherent bias towards certain approaches, and gives you some motivation to actually explore things that you don't agree with and have an open mind. Be open to the idea that maybe you're not absolutely right. Be open to the opportunity that maybe there are other approaches, and that the more accepting you are of other possible approaches, the more tools you have in your own toolbox to be an effective coach. It's kind of like they say, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem starts to look like a nail. So that is it. That's just something that I had on my mind the last couple of days, and hopefully it gives you some interesting and new perspective that maybe you didn't have before.